I think done. Now we can. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar on Agentic AI for the Middle East. Very excited to have all of you here today, and thank you for joining this webinar. It's a pleasure to see all of you today, and thank you for taking out the time. So today's topic is going to be a very interesting one. It's something that we at Fluid are very passionate about. And we are seeing the Middle East take a very different direction on agentic AI. And that's why we thought that doing this webinar for all of you who are part of the AI community could be something very exciting. And at the same time, could lead to lots of ideas and discussions in terms of how your companies and enterprises are really looking at agentic AI and, and seeing the implementations of agents across the company. So we'll give a minute or so while everyone joins in, and then we'll sort of straight away get into the presentation. But while we get into the presentation, just before that, want to keep it very interactive. Please feel free to put in your comments in the chat box. We'll be viewing them. Anytime you have any doubts, please feel free to raise your hand. Happy to sort of take these questions and go forward from there. So don't think of it as a one-way discourse, but something where you can sort of really, immerse yourselves within. So while we get started, I think one of the key things that we are very excited about this year compared to last year was that last year, there was a transition happening from Gen AI to Agentic AI. I think this year the transition has happened, right? I think in the Gen AI world, a lot of it was about content, right? Creating great content, creating great kind of, whether it be text content, video content, image content. But with agents, I think we've really got the ability to get this Gen AI capabilities within the enterprise, right? To go for really high function, high usage kind of use cases, right? We are able to now interact with the power of tools like MCP with the structured data as well, right? So it's not just about unstructured data. We're able to see a lot of unstructured data as well get connected. We are able to use tools like MCP to connect these at the next level. While at the same time, we're able to go much beyond just content creation, right? I think one of the key things earlier on was seen as, oh, this is great for content, this is great as a RAG tool, but there's really not much else. But with agents, we are able to go to practical, real life scenarios, which are very powerful when they come together. So I think we have a good enough audience now. Let's get started. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and let's go from there. All right. So one of the key things that I think a fact that all of us are seeing is that 66% of consumers are using Gen AI regularly and are deriving value from it. Whereas when MIT and McKinsey talk about, they are saying that less than 5 to 10% of enterprises have derived significant value from AI. And let's just hold this number for a second, right? 66% of the consumer side is saying Gen AI is deriving them value. And then when we go to the enterprise side, 5 to 10%, a 61% drop in the usage, in the kind of value that Gen AI is giving. And that's a very interesting question to sort of look at when we go down, right? We see that this is a massive difference. And why is that difference occurring? So what I brought up on screen is an interesting puzzle, and we feel that this puzzle sort of solves that conundrum of why Gen AI is seeing such great success at the consumer side, whereas the enterprise is not seeing that. So, simple question. You need to get from the arrow on the left of your screens to the arrow on top of your screens, right? And I'm going to give you 15, 20 seconds to see, how you can do this. The arrow on the left of the screens to the arrow on top of your screens. So some of you, and a lot of you, I'm guessing, may have gone through the maze, right? You may have said, okay, let's go through this maze and sort of figure things out. But did any of you consider this route or this route? Right. If you go back to the instructions I gave, it simply said get from the arrow on the left of your screens to the arrow on top of your screens. I didn't use the word maze. I didn't use the word black lines. But typically, a lot of us, as soon as we see this problem, and I've done this puzzle at hundreds of different places, all of us try to attempt going through the maze because that's what we're used to as a group. But when we look at it individually, and I've done this in students where there's a lot of individualistic thinking, a lot of them have come up with these answers. So one thing I would strongly want all of you to consider is that when we come to enterprise solutions and think about enterprise ideas, there's a bias called the status quo bias, right? And even though we may not have it, when we sit in larger groups, when we sit with our teams, that status quo bias comes very close. But when you implement something as powerful as Agentic AI, I would suggest looking at first principle thinking, right? Which is simple, like how do I get from the left arrow to the arrow on top, and what are my routes? Having said that, a little bit of intro before we jump in. So we are Fluid AI. We've been in the AI space for the last 12 years and generative AI for the last 4. In fact, we did some of our first Gen AI use cases even before the launch of ChatGPT. We've been really pushing for how AI can sort of change and transform. We've worked a lot with global banks and financial institutions, everywhere from an Emirates NBD to a Barclays to a Belize Bank. So large banks, small banks. We've done a lot of work in the oil and gas sector like HPCL, NABARD, etc. So it's been a fairly wide kind of implementation spread that we have undertaken. And it's been interesting for us to learn some of these lessons and sort of apply them elsewhere as we go through. One of the other interesting aspects which we did about 6 years ago was we created the first AI avatar for Warren Buffett. This was an AI avatar of Warren, which you could speak to. Warren could speak back to you. It was there for the 100th anniversary of Forbes. And it really created an impact in terms of what is possible out there. We've also been doing a lot of work with the media in terms of educating people that agentic AI really doesn't take jobs away, but it actually accentuates human skill and human ability to the next level. So one of the first questions we are asked when we talk in the media is, hey, will this take away jobs? And our answer has always been no. This is our office space here in Mumbai. We'd love to have you over if any of you ever make it down there. We also wrote one of the world's first books written by Agentic AI. This was launched a month before ChatGPT. It's called Bridging the AI Gap. And it talks a lot about how companies can use the power of AI within, as well as motivate staff internally to really take this forward. So that was a little bit about us. Now coming to one of the key questions that I think all of you in the audience may have is that how do you select the right agentic AI use case in the Middle East, right? You are being bombarded by use case ideas from your teams, from folks across, and all of them are saying, hey, how do we get our use case to the top of the priority for the IT teams to solve? And that's where we've come up with this very interesting pyramid, right? I think we've plotted business value on the left and feasibility on the right. And I think sometimes in the Middle East, it gets very focused to the left, right? A lot of attention on business value, whereas feasibility sort of gets left across. So it's this matrix that gives us the best use cases that can be applied as of today, right? I think it's key to sort of look at this as a mix rather than get over-indexing on business value or over-indexing on feasibility. So what this leads to is use cases which come in the middle, which are the likely wins, where the business value is high and the feasibility is high. And those are the agentic AI use cases we encourage companies to take first, and especially in the Middle East. Then it comes down to the calculated risks, which are high business value, but their technical feasibility may be complex. There may be a lot of technology steps we may need to undertake. We go then to the marginal gains where the feasibility is high. Business value is sort of a question mark, but they're also easy to do. So they keep us in the rhythm. And then where the business value is low, the feasibility is low, we really don't need to take those cases except if there's an exception or two. But that's really how, as I throw use cases at you later in this webinar, I would encourage all of you to look at it, that this is the chart. We sort of go from the likely wins to the calculated risks to marginal gain and selective exceptions. A lot of times in the Middle East, we've seen the start at calculated risks. And that is a very major mistake because, yes, there's high business value, but the amount of time and the bottlenecks that you as a technical team may face are extremely high. So sometimes the enthusiasm runs out. Whereas if you start with a likely win, folks are able to power through the lows that a calculated risk brings because they've seen success earlier. So when we look at you doing your agentic AI strategy, we really encourage a very different architectural approach. An approach wherein you go with building blocks rather than a grand design strategy. So up on the screen, I have two of the most iconic buildings across. I have Sydney Opera House, I have the Guggenheim Museum. And one of these buildings was 10 times over budget and about 7 years late. The other was 10% under budget and was right on time. Can you guess which building was which? What do you think? Which was the one that went over budget and was significantly late? If you guessed Sydney Opera House, you are right. That was the one that went over budget. And when you look at the architectural decision that they took, was the way they approached the problem was they first led a design competition. They said, hey, who can design this beautiful building the best? They chose their design and then they broke ground. But when they broke ground, they realized a lot of smaller problems. That they realized there's a wind issue, they realized the ground is too soft, the structure, the design is too complex, etc., etc. It took them a long time. The Guggenheim Museum instead was a very different approach. It kept a competition to select the best architect. But once they gave it to him, what they told him was that, hey, you now have the freedom to sort of experiment. So what he did was he took a warehouse right across the street from the place where the Guggenheim was going to be built. He first built a tabletop model. Then he built a model as large as about a bedroom. Then he built a model as big as the warehouse. And then they broke ground. In all those implementations, they learned a lot. They understood various changes they need to make and they implemented. That's the way you need to go with their agentic AI strategy. I see a lot of times in the Middle East, organizations sort of say, hey, we need to sort of grand design, right? We need to have a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan. And that essentially creates a lot of inertia, right? Because before you can do your first use case, there's a lot of back and forth. Does this fit into strategy? Does this fit into plan? What we have seen is nimbler organizations going ahead with quick learnings, quick sort of implementations, learn, revise, repeat. Those are sort of getting the best results from agentic AI overall. And agentic AI really is a different shift from Gen AI, right? A lot of people sort of say, hey, if Gen AI is Fabric agentic, they're sort of similar. But what I would like to tell you is that there's a very different approach when agents come into play. So this is the Gen AI old school approach. It's for the creation of video content. The human prompts, the video gets created, maybe something like a VO31, runway ML, the human reviews, and then the loop continues forward. But what an agentic system would look like is extremely different, right? The tools may be the same. We may still use a VO3.1 or a runway ML as a part of an agentic system. But the challenge that we have now as orchestrators is very different. It's from the prompt engineers with Gen AI sort of say. So in this case, in an agentic case, the human simply gives an idea and a goal, right? The agentic system will figure out the right prompts, the right scene, that then goes to a generative system which uses VO3, runway ML. There's another agentic system which may be reviewing whether the content is good, whether it meets brand guidelines, what is the kind of initial feedback we're getting if it's already been put out, and then revising that content again and again till a better video comes out. So the final review is still human, But the kind of methodology an AI agent creator needs to do vis-a-vis what a prompt engineer needs to do is massively different. And that's something we encourage a lot of our companies that are implementing agentic AI to really look at this. That the prompt engineer skill was great for 2 years ago, but now you need a human in the loop who is more of an orchestrator, who's more of a designer of loops rather than a prompt engineer. And remember, right, agentic systems can get extremely expensive, right? Because they are now sort of controlling everything from start to finish. So we need to give these agents a budget restriction, right? Because that is something that sort of really creates a lot of fear. How much are the agents consuming? So if we put the guardrails around budgets, then it becomes a much easier sort of discussion to have vis-a-vis going ahead and sort of getting those surprises. Having said that, a lot of people ask me, Raghav, what do you think? How many agents will a company of the future have? And will it be five? Will it be 10? And what I'm saying is, don't think in those kind of numbers. But the organization of the future is going to have 500 agentic AIs. I see a lot of times that it's in the Middle East that a lot of folks are looking at it from a use case perspective, right? How many use cases? Two, three, four. I would say lose that perspective and go for a visionary perspective. How does your organization become agentic first in terms of deploying agents almost everywhere rather than looking at certain use cases and certain implementation methodologies? One of the key areas that we sort of look at when it comes to agents and AI is how does the customer experience change, right? If you look at today's customer experience, it's going to be compared to ChatGPT or Gemini, your favorite agent AI tool. And how does a bank, a financial institution, a manufacturing company offer the same kind of experience? Because remember, in the Middle East, right, the chatbot world really didn't work because a lot of Middle Eastern customers said, hey, we want to talk to a human who understands and empathizes with us. But now we have the opportunity to really get that empathy going, to really get these agentic systems to be powerful enough, to be real time enough, responsive enough to give the customer a experience at par or even exceeding ChatGPT. Right? So that's the kind of power we're seeing. 18 billion messages, 700 million users each week using this technology, and they're comparing your organization's customer interfaces to the interfaces they see on ChatGPT, on Gemini, and all these different AI tools out there. So what's getting really powerful is that can we sort of have an approach wherein our AI agents are as responsive, our customer experience powered by AI agents is making a similar kind of impact. Because remember, right now it's the human talking to your systems. But in 2 years, your customers will have their own AI agents. And these agents are going to do something called agent to agent conversations, agent to agent commerce. And it's extremely essential for us to have our agentic platform ready so that when the human at the other end gets replaced by an agent, those AI agents can talk together and give a fantastic customer experience. So let's rethink this experience from start to scale. And one of the key areas we feel that agentic AI is going to make a difference is onboarding. Whether you are a bank, whether you are an insurer, whether you are a telco company, your onboarding will completely change using AI agents. So let me now stop talking and show you how this can look like in the real world in terms of AI agents getting on board. Because in terms of the Middle East, what we have seen is there's a lot of friction for a customer to get onboarded, either at a financial institution, either at a telco, or even maybe in a medical situation. Right? And the organizations which use AI agents first to solve this are going to have a massive competitive advantage in the region. So what I've done out here is I'm going to showcase to you an AI agent system which onboards really quickly a customer, and these different AI agents sort of work together. So firstly, we ask the customer some queries. We say, okay, name, birth date, etc. The customer can answer very freely and openly out there. He can just simply put in all this information and get that out there. Now, once this customer has given me that information, the system says, okay, it breaks it down into its pieces and says, confirm, the name, the date of birth, the passport number, etc. And now the customer can free flowingly upload all their IDs, right? They don't need to say, this is my passport, this is my driver's license. They just upload it as if it's a WhatsApp chat. The AI can understand each document for what it is. It says, okay, this is a civil ID, the Kuwaiti national ID. It's immediately extracting information. No need for formats. If the format changes, it understands the data on it. It extracts information from salary slips, which typically are highly unstructured pieces of information. Each company has their own format. And then it creates a verification table, right? It says, hey, okay, now that I've understood all these documents, where are they matching? Are there any kind of mismatches anywhere? If they are, do I escalate it to a human? If they are not, can I onboard the customer easily? Can I integrate with a one-time password system and really get the customer sort of going out there, right? So now we have the ability to onboard customers in minutes, right? And a lot of this can rest on-prem as well, right? A lot of people think, oh, a lot of this will go to the cloud. This is sensitive user data, is their national IDs, is their passports. But that's really, really not the case, right? You now have the ability to sort of really take these documents everywhere, and these different AI agents sort of solve that problem going forward. Now, we've talked about customer onboarding, right? And that's about a key thing. But a lot of times, post onboarding, the customer is sort of interacting with you, having conversations with you. And where is that one intelligence layer where the customer can talk to you and have an interaction with you, which understands the customer across email, across WhatsApp, across chat, across phone calls, and creates a single source of truth for the customer to have a wow experience? If you look at the enterprise support reality in the Middle East today, right, a lot of it is fragmented systems patched together. A lot of focus on training and more scripts. A lot. It takes about a couple of weeks for a new human agent to be trained to sort of first talk to a customer. That then leads to there's not enough human agents to talk to customers, so we have limited support hours, just 9 to 5. Customers have to sort of, if they want to talk later, they need to schedule their times, etc. And that creates these complexities, right? You're hiring up bigger teams, you're training them, and you're not really giving the support experience that you intended to in the first place. But can that change, right? Can we have AI agents across email, across website, across WhatsApp, across voice on phone calls to really change the game to have the next level customer conversation? And not just have it in, in English, but have it in local dialects, in local Arabic dialects, in Kuwaiti, in Saudi, in Dubai, to be authentic enough to have a real-time conversation rather than something that's artificial or like the chatbots of. So one of the key things that we feel a lot of organizations miss is that they straight away go to voice AI, right? Which is exciting and fancy. But email AI is also a great place to play, right? We are seeing a lot of customers connect in the Middle East with their financial institutions, with their insurers, with their medical companies over email. And a lot of times, email has been something that's slow to be responded to. That takes time for organizations to do because someone does it, and then that channel falls off the customer's grid. Right? They don't typically use email any longer because they're like, oh, they're responsive 3-4 days later. But email is a really cheap and effective channel. So let's see this video of how we have automated these email inboxes to be really run by these AI agents. And the customer just simply sends the email. He says, he had an issue. He was depositing some cash, but the ATM ate it up. He didn't get the receipt, etc. The AI will respond under 30 minutes to each and every email. So whether it's an email at 5 a.m. in the morning, at 12 midnight, the responses go up. They start by solving 65% of the queries, but they go up all the way to 70, 75, 80, 90% of the queries as well. So that becomes something that's really powerful. And what additionally they do is that the customer now has the ability to respond back and forth as well, right? So a lot of people, when they see email, they say, oh, the AI can respond once. But what they forget is that these AI agents can actually have multiple conversations. So let's say the customer has forgotten to maybe give certain details in the first email. It doesn't escalate to human. It instead says, hey, you have to still give me this information so that I can answer your queries, etc. And that then goes over to something like chat as well, right? We have seen a lot of focus on chat. And we have seen that these AI agents on chat can become really powerful in terms of the experience that they offer to the customers, and overall the overall benefits that customers can have using these kind of AI agents. So let me show you an experience over on these. So here, if you see all the blue boxes, right, they are literally these AI agents connected to different systems, right? So to the card system, to the account system, to the loan system, the collection system, and all these agents can talk to each other, right? They can have these wonderful, strong experiences wherein they can sort of give the customer a very strong experience, right? And these are drag and drop editors, so they're not like the chatbots of the old, wherein you literally sat and said, okay, this bot, if I need to change a single fact, I need to go in the back end and connect. They're very intelligent. They're connected to your website. They're connected to all kinds of other systems, so they can instantly be updated if the website gets updated. If there's any information change anywhere else, they can be updated. So here the user has gone and said, I want to block my card, or they can say, I want an account balance, and they can do that. And so what happens with these is the user goes ahead and says, okay, I want to block my card. And then the system can actually follow the authentication process. Right? So it can say, okay, if you want to block your card, I need your TRN and your tax number. I need the last 4 digits of your card. And these kind of conversations can happen in a very authentic manner, right? If the customer says, oh, I don't, instead of blocking my card, I need you to give me my balance in the middle, they can do that. Within all of this, you also have the ability to do cross-sell upsell, right? So let's say the user's card balance comes really high, and we say, okay, there's an opportunity to upsell him a better card or a better credit account, etc. All those things can happen, and there are no longer any kind of decision trees or flows followed, right? The users having free flowing conversations. They change context from blocking cards to asking for balances. The ones whose balances are given, an upsell can be tried. So all of these different kind of kind of discussions can happen with these kind of AI agents. So that's on the on the chat side. But and that same flows through to WhatsApp as well. So what we have seen is WhatsApp is another powerful channel. So in the interest of time, I'll skip the video demo. But what we have seen with WhatsApp is in the Middle East, that's a key channel, right? I think even sometimes we've encouraged certain organizations to look at going WhatsApp first and then launching the bots on their website, because that's the kind of penetration we're seeing in the Middle East. So let's go on and talk about the elephant in the room. Right? It's nice, email, chat, WhatsApp, but customers still call. And why do customers call is because they need a human on the line. But now with voice AI, we can give them an experience which is very similar to the human, and which can give them that kind of instant sort of solution, instant kind of resolution to their problems there and then. And no one wants to do it the old IVR way, right? Press 1 for Arabic, 2 for English. They want to talk instantly. They don't want scripts at the other end. They want it to be something very seamless and very easy to do overall. So what we have done at Fluid is we've been able to launch these kind of voice AIs, which can really go ahead and have a voice call with the customer. And I'm going to show you one. It's in Kuwaiti. I'm going to show you an actual call where the customer calls up the bank. It's linked to the bank's current phone number, and then this the user gets a resolution to her queries, etc. So let me sort of go ahead and show you this video in action.
مرحبا، شلونك اليوم؟ شنو تحب تعرف من خدمات فلويد بانك؟ نقدر نساعدك في القروض الشخصية بطاقات الائتمان وإدارة الثروات. وبالمناسبة
I think the audio is a bit off. 1 second.
إذا تفكر بطاقة ائتمان مميزة، أقترح عليك بطاقة إميريت سكايوردز، لأنها تضاعف الأميال على تذاكر الطيران
أهلا،
وتزيد نقاطك بشكل كبير.
أنا
يلا
أبي أجمع حسابي في البنك.
أهلا. أكيد نقدر نعرف رصيد البطاقة. أول شيء أحتاج منك تاريخ ميلادك. ممكن تعطيني تاريخ ميلادك لو
9/5/2003.
شكرا. الحين أحتاج آخر 4 أرقام من بطاقتك الائتمانية. تفضل قولي.
11652.
تمام. الآن أحتاج اسم والدتك قبل الزواج للتحقق. ممكن تخبرني بالاسم لو سمحت؟
إيمان.
رصيد بطاقتك الائتمانية هو 1168 دينار كويتي. وبالمناسبة أرشح لك بشدة إنك تفكر في تحويل بطاقتك إلى بطاقة إميريت سكايوردز، لأنها بتضاعف لك الأميال على تذاكر الطيران وبتزيد نقاطك بشكل كبير. إذا
لا مشكور، ما أبي.
عاد ساعة. إذا احتجت أي مساعدة إضافية في المستقبل أو حاب تستفسر عن أي من خدماتنا، تقدر تتواصل معي بأي وقت.
مشكور، ما قصرت.
العفو، واجبنا. أي وقت تحتاج شيء.
So there we see a comprehensive conversation with the AI happening. The user could interrupt the bot. It was completely in Kuwaiti. The ability was to interrupt. The ability was to change context. She started with trying to block her card. Block her card. Then she went to get the balance in the account, and then it tried an upsell because the amount was quite high. And if you see the validations, right, we took date of birth, we took the last 4 digits of the card. So we actually followed through the entire discussion with the user to ensure that the security protocols also followed. So at different points, different agents were trying to ensure the user is authenticated, and then there was an upsell agent hitting, and the user at all times was free to sort of have the conversation. They were interrupting the bot, they were giving answers in different formats, and the AI voice bot was able to do all of this was happening in the bank's infrastructure. In terms of it was happening real time. We were connected to different systems of the bank, and it was happening on the phone number of the bank as well. So using SIP technology, we now have the ability to connect to the same phone number that the bank is currently using. And so there really is no challenge from in terms of saying, hey, we'll have to call a different number. Will it be a different voice? We can get the dialects right now. So voice AI for any business which has a B2C aspect to it is a really big tool that can really game change, better customer support, cheaper customer support, and really allow you to sort of expand your customer support estate very quickly and very cost effectively. One of the things that we've seen in the Middle East is that before voice AI, people want to get a taste, right? I think in the Middle East, we have seen that a lot of institutions still don't have chatbots, etc. Because the previous era of chatbots was very flow based. It was slow to run. So a lot of Middle Eastern organizations, knowing Middle Eastern consumers, didn't go ahead and implement these AI bots. But what we believe is there's a massive opportunity to put these AI web assistants, right? So these are simple ones. You just put them on the website. They absorb all the information from the website. They are more informational, more sales oriented, but it's one of the simplest steps to start off with before you go down the entire Agentic AI journey. These go live in as quick as 30 days, they're cheap to launch, and they give you a great uplift, right? Because a lot of customers are visiting the website. Because websites are so large today, this is a quick solution to sort of just quickly absorb all the information on the website. You don't need to update it. As soon as the website is updated, these AI bots are updated and kickstart your AI agent journey. So, these are the ways they can rest on the website. And a lot of people have talked about is that, okay, we've talked about email, we've talked about chat, we've talked about voice, and customer service is extremely sensitive area of any bank, any insurer, any service related organization. How do we de-risk this journey, right? Because there's just so much risk we take on when we start all of this, right? How do we ensure that the AIs don't have a bad conversation, or customers don't feel that we are sort of stop being human and we've outsourced everything to the AI? And that's where we've come up with this de-risking framework in terms of, which has worked well in many regions, wherein we start with email support, we move to live chat, and then we move to voice phone calls as well. So, you don't need to do everything in one shot. You can, in fact, move step by step, wherein you can start off with something as simple as human assist, then move on to email support, then move on to live chat. And this is a journey we did with the Caribbean Bank, which launched email which launched human assist on day one. Then about a week later they launched email. About 3 weeks later they launched phone. They launched chat, and then about 1 month later they launched phone. So in 2 months they completed this journey. It's not a very long journey, but each part of the journey sort of helped them learn a little more, helped them understand a little more. And in 2 months, because they broke it down this way, they were able to quickly sort of get success. Typically, we have seen customer support, customer interaction journeys. We are seeing a 4x kind of return on investment for a lot of the customer-oriented organizations. So that's on the customer journey side. But coming to organizations which sort of look at saying, okay, how do we empower internal employees? And one of the key areas we are seeing with that is RAG, right? Retrieval augmented generation, wherein we take a lot of documents. There's a lot of unstructured data resting, etc. A lot of systems. And can these systems be, can we get answers from these systems? So here's a demo on screen. And I think a lot of times when we sort of talk about this, a lot of organizations say, hey, we've tried something like a Copilot, but it costs $20, $30 per user per month, and there's not much usage. And that's where we say that when you deploy these employee productivity AIs, you don't need to be paying per user, right? I think what we encourage a lot of organizations to think about is, and we provide that model, is can there be a license of enterprise? So you're not paying for users who are not using it, right? You're simply saying, okay, it's an enterprise-wide license. I'm not, where maybe there's a maximum currency of maybe 50 users, 100 users, 150 users. But the ability is there for anyone to sort of log in, use this tool, get answers to their queries as and when required, and really go there, right? So instead of it being something that's hidden away or not really being used, and you're paying $30, instead can it be something that everyone in the organization can quickly use and quickly get going, right? So and secondly, the grounding, right? How can it connect instantaneously to your data sources? How can it sort of give the user an experience of instantly drilling down to where it's getting the answer, ensuring zero hallucination, right? So here the users ask the question, what is the penalty for not reporting a suspicious transaction? He gets the answer. He now has the ability to actually drill down and see where the answer is coming from, which document, which page of the document. So that's really, really important, right? No hallucination, 100% accuracy, and the ability to sort of really go ahead and what do you call it, drill down and see where the answer is coming from. So I think one of the key things that we are also seeing is collections, right? I think and collections, while banks obviously have a big function to it, we're also seeing insurers who are collecting premiums, telco companies collecting postpaid bills. A lot of times that's still a human function, right? Because in the Middle East, typically we say 10 to 15% of consumers typically need a reminder, need some kind of interaction to sort of pay up and collect from. But typically these are just reminders, right? They are typically just a SMS, there are WhatsApp message, there's an email, there's a phone call. But can we take these to the next level? And here what we have seen is, and we'll show you this demo in action, a voice AI, which is having calls and taking promises from the customer, right? In terms of saying, okay, we know you've not paid, having the ability to actually negotiate with the customer, get dates and promises done. that changes the game of your collections interface, right? Because then you're not simply sending a reminder to the customer, you're actually having a full-on conversation. So let me show you this demo in action of a collections agent.
أهلا. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. هل أنا أتكلم مع الأخت صوفيا؟
إي نعم، تفضلي.
شكرا يا أخت صوفيا. أنا بتصل من فلويد بانك بخصوص حسابك اللي آخر 4 أرقام فيه 3177. عليك دفعة مستحقة بقيمة 150 دينار، كانت مستحقة من تاريخ أمس 12 يناير 2026.
إي صحيح، هذا صح.
ممكن تقولي لي إذا في سبب معين لتأخير الدفع؟
إي أنا الحين عندي مشكلة بالراتب، وعشان كذي ما قدرت أدفع.
أتفهم. شكرا إنك شاركتيني هالشيء. إن شاء الله تخبريني متى تتوقعين تقدرين تسددين المبلغ بالكامل؟
أقدر أدفع 20/1/2026.
يعني نتكلم عن 21 يناير 2026، مضبوط؟
إي 21 يناير 2026.
تمام. ممكن أسأل كيف تفضلي تدفعين المبلغ؟ عن طريق تحويل بنكي أو باستخدام البطاقة؟
لا، أحب أو أفضل إني أدفع من خلال تحويل بنكي.
ممتاز. إذا نتفق دفع 150 دينار بتاريخ 21 يناير 2026 عن طريق التحويل البنكي، صحيح؟
صحيح.
شكرا لوقتك. راح نرسل
عفواً.
لك وسيلة. حياك الله. مع السلامة.
All right. So that was the entire conversation in Kuwaiti Arabic, where the user
مع
got
السلامة.
a collection call, and then they sort of went ahead. There was a problem; they couldn't pay on time. They went ahead, but they had that conversation with the AI. They gave a promise to pay for a future date. There was a date. They decided they'll do a bank transfer on that date. So this kind of conversation and rich information the AI could get and actually have that conversation going forward, right? And it moves so much beyond a reminder in the region, right? This is a promise that's come. The AI can then follow up on that promise a day before, so it can really ensure that the customer follow through on his promise, and there's an actual closure rather than just a reminder. All right, I see Abhinav has joined us on the webinar as well. So welcome Abhinav. It's glad to have you here today.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure and super excited and seeing some of the amazing stuff that you were showing to everyone today.
So now moving ahead, we move to, one of the areas that we've seen is the HR assistance and IT desk, right? So we've talked a lot about stuff that touches the customer. But this is one area where we feel that it's a really quick win, especially in the region. The HR AIs, which can talk to HRI, the HR systems, which can talk to the HR policies, give the employees quick answers, right? And this saves anywhere employees from 1 to 2 hours every month, and save the HR team almost 4 to 5 full-time resources because they don't need to follow up on this. Similarly with IT, right? Password resets, issuance of laptops, all of that. That's something that we've seen has been a very powerful use case in the region as well. So I'm not going to go into the depth of this one. I think this is a use case that we feel agents can solve very quickly, and something that we can we really encourage organizations to look at it going forward. It's something that's a quick start and gets things going fairly quickly. So, what we are seeing largely is a lot of different AI agents, right? We're seeing a lot on the customer facing side. We showed you the ones on support. There's a very interesting field that's emerging around the sales piece, right? Because these AI agents are able to have very strong sales conversations with prospective customers, guide them to the right product, etc. Vendor conversations are also been interesting. We showed you stuff around KYC, around collections. So the customer facing side has been very exciting. On the sales side, they have been great at creating presentations and proposals for sales teams, searching different RFPs. If you're in that kind of business, to help you find RFPs out there, and then the content side, obviously, we have seen a lot of content creation, AI influencers. We're seeing a lot of work around HR and IT help desk, which we feel is the low hanging fruit. Some of the new emerging fields we are seeing is the data analysis area, right? Wherein instead of running complex queries, we are seeing folks, use business users being able to just ask questions, and the AI can bring the data from different systems. Reporting can get automated, and there's no code querying. And then on the other side, we're seeing regulatory, right? So if you're in a very regulated industry, can regulatory circulars be understood? Can they be explained to teams? Can their implications on the company be sort of quickly given to everyone in the know? So in all of this, I think, right, a lot of people are saying, yes, the use cases exist. We've got the general strategy, but this regulation around the AI is getting really tight in the Middle East, right? I think what we are seeing is that there's a lot of concern about where data is being stored, how it's being stored. And we have come up with two very interesting approaches. One is sovereign AI running completely on your infrastructure. Abhinav, would you like to talk a little bit about how sovereign AI in the Middle East is possible with local GPUs running and with nothing on the public cloud being involved out there?
Absolutely, Raghav. And we're seeing a lot of just the having the ability to deploy these things without too much regulation and challenge, sovereign and completely on-prem has been, or in the customer's cloud has been the way to go. So there are about four key parts to any implementation, right? There's the application, the agentic AI platform, the LLMs, all the documentation and knowledge that goes in. So what we're seeing as being the most popular methodology is you put all of that in, either in your private cloud or in your on-prem servers, and you're kind of good to go in this nice encapsulation, which is great for legal because they're essentially now they get the how do I put it? They get that feeling of security, and that's throughout the organization that nothing's moving out. And then if you just move one slide ahead, you can, and we've seen some hybrid implementations do this, right? If you don't want to have the GPUs, you don't want to buy GPUs, if you're like a completely on-premise shop, you can actually have the LLM layer or the GPU layer on let's say a public cloud as an option. If you're kind of doing something like voice, where the GPU consumption is much higher, you could kind of go with a hybrid methodology where just the AI part is on the cloud. But like for things like KYC, etc., just put everything in one place on-prem. So it's a really strong architecture, very secure, and enables a lot of things and very quick through compliance.
Yeah, and I think with the hybrid strategy, right? I mean, you have the option of then either having the LLM, maybe you use certain LLMs for certain use cases on the local where it's, there's a lot of data privacy and security involved. And then where you need best of breed cloud LLMs, you sort of can expose your agentic platform to those as well, right? So you can sort of have a best of both worlds kind of approach, which I think really is something we're seeing a lot of customers in the Middle East sort of go down with.
Absolutely.
I think one thing that, so we've talked about how it can be done either completely sovereign or hybrid, and how we're both seeing these approaches. I think another area that we're seeing a lot of discussion around is expectation, right? I think when we're implementing agentic AI, a lot of folks are saying, okay, how is this going to impact? And leadership's expectations from agentic AI are going sky high, right? They're sort of, there's almost this expectation that results are going to come quickly, and as soon as the implementation goes live, there's really not much to be done. We straight away see massive change, and that can occur, right? So you can sort of have graphs like the one I'm just going to bring up, wherein post implementation you have a period of stabilization and then you go straight up, right? So that's obviously the happy part, but this happens quite rarely out there, right? I think this is obviously something leadership will love, but this is something that happens quite rarely, right? Another sort of expectation that sometimes folks in technology have is that, hey, results are going to be super straight off the bat, and then they'll plateau as as things typically do, right? The improvements sort of start petering out, the edge cases continue to remain, and you sort of see this kind of graph as well. So, but again, surprisingly to us, at least in the region, what we're seeing is this doesn't occur too often, right? We are not seeing this graph as well. There's another, school of thought that says, hey, it's just a straight line. Things improve at a gradual pace, and we have these improvements sort of grow very gradually, straight up, and then that's sort of how things happen. There's really not much in there's maybe small changes, but you sort of have this straight line approach. But what we sort of really see is something very different, right? I think we don't see much of any of these three graphs. Instead, what we are seeing is a very different kind of scenario altogether. And just to prove that out, I have these two stars up on screen. One is blue, one is red. And I have performance and time on this graph. Now, most of us would prefer to be the blue star because it's higher up. But one thing that we need to be aware of, that this is a point in time comparison. It doesn't talk about the history or the future. So if you look at this graph today, you may say, hey, this is, I want to be the blue star. But if you see the trajectory of the red star, that's the one that's going to go up. So if you look at this Netflix and Blockbuster, Netflix is the red star and Blockbuster is the blue star. Shimaru, which is a regional player, which was very similar to Blockbuster. You see how the stars were very strong at one point in time, but it's the red star that sort of took things forward, and now Netflix dominates. It's destroyed Shimaru in the region and destroyed Blockbuster globally. So when it comes to AI implementations, what we see is a graph, which I'm just going to bring up, which looks something like this, right? There's literally a J curve. You first go down, right? As people need to change the way they do business, the way they function day to day. There's this death valley, right? There's almost a place where you're like, oh wow, this is harder than we thought. People are not using it. There's a lot of change management involved, a lot of cultural nuance coming in. And at level 2, you almost see a lot of people saying, maybe agentic AI is just all hype, or maybe it's not meant for us. But what we really encourage everyone to do is show these charts to your team before the implementation. Show them before you go down this road, because then they'll understand that it's not just about technology, right, which will give you some results, but it's also about having expectations of cultural change, of business change, of functional change. And that you'll need to power through in the Death Valley to see these kind of results, right? You'll see spikes, you'll see plateaus, and then you'll see spikes again when models improve, when teams are sort of more agentically inclined. So it's going to be it's not going to be a straight line journey. It's going to be J curves, it's going to be death valleys. But if you are sort of aware and you sort of educate your teams through this, it can be sort of really powerful. One thing that we really insist, and in the region that sometimes gets lost, is that a lot of times people say, oh, we have a 3-month, a 6-month, a 9-month plan to take these agents live. We have made a rule that agents need to go live in 60 days from concept to production. Because if they're not, your business is changing too quickly, the AI models are changing too quickly, the entire environment is too dynamic to have an implementation timeline larger than 60 days for when your AI agents must go live. So this is a surprise to a lot of people in IT who are used to see these 6 months. But we're not saying the whole agentic system needs to go live. You may release a sliver, you may release a small element of it, but something needs to hit production in 60 days, because that's the only way these agents tune, fine-tune, improve, and not in a cycle. Another key question that the Middle East always asks is build versus buy. Typically, Middle East has been largely a buy market. We've bought from the right vendors. We've gone there. But now with so much open source coming in, so much ability to pick and choose different things and build ourselves, that debate is sort of coming there. And Abhinav, I'd like to bring you in and say, what do you think? Where do you fall on this build versus buy, spectrum?
Yeah. So no, I think Raghav, you made a lot of sense, right? That typically when customers look at build and buy, right, if they have a really strong tech talent internally, who's also has the time. They're not busy, let's say, running the bank, running the organization's core technologies, right? They have that time. It's a good idea to evaluate build. But the only thing you need to be a little careful of is that when people see like an open source library demo, it looks like, wow, these guys could hit 65, guys and girls could hit 65% accuracy in 2 weeks. So 90, 95 will probably be another 2 weeks, and we can go live. Uh, but they need to understand that that journey from 65 to 90 is sometimes a year-long journey or even longer. uh, you can see that with products like Gemini, where version one, or they had called it Bard at that time. Version one of their models was quite decent, right? They hit that 65, 70% accuracy quite early, after ChatGPT launch. But that journey for them to then hit 90, 95 and actually catch up in the game was about a year and a half, 2 year journey. Uh, and with buy, I
So
think it's just a great way of accelerating whatever you're looking at building, lowering the risk of failing, or getting caught into a high cost situation, and just getting delivery out really quick.
true, Abhinav, and thanks for that. I think there's obviously this. I think it's a hybrid, right? You build in some places, you buy in some places, and that sort of. I think you've sort of really laid out where you need to build, where you need to buy, and sort of go from there, right? Yeah. Perfect. All right. So I think one thing that we are stressing is now that the time for pilots is sort of over. You're either building or falling behind overall. So I think there's a goal out there to now sort of really go out there and get these implementations done, get things going, rather than being stuck on a lot of pilots, right? I think we really need to now be building new technology rather than looking at it from a uh, you know uh, a pilot or a POC concept. I think a lot of the functionality now needs to sort of hit all of us fairly quickly.
It's
And
like, I just want to raise kind of a quick example, right? Like today, nobody goes and says, I want to pilot a CRM, right? They just go ahead and say, I'm going to pick a CRM vendor and deploy it. I think generative AI has reached that maturity, and it needs that commitment to actually deliver that value quickly.
true, Abhinav. I think there's definitely something to be said for now, sort of going ahead and implementing rather than you know being in a pivoting pilot kind of a zone. I think one thing that I would sort of want to leave all of you with is a very interesting sort of a paradigm, right? I think now that we come to this paradigm of AI, there's a question that all of us need to see, right? Till the previous generation, a lot of the thing was about having the right answer, but in the world of AI, it's going to be about having the right questions, right? And to say that, I'll sort of bring up this airplane up on screen. This is the British used to send these fighter jets across, to Germany, and they were studying, how many of them came back, and they wanted to increase that ratio. So they built this dot map, right? So wherever you see these white dots, that's where the planes got hit, which went to Germany and came back, and they started reinforcing these white dot areas. When they sent the planes with the reinforcement, it was still challenging. The number of planes coming back were too few because they were getting hit by German military. And that's when they said, oh, we've asked the wrong question. We have studied the planes which have come back. So even if your plane gets hit in these white dot areas, it has the ability to come back. The planes that didn't come back got hit in the black area, right? Because those were weak. And when a plane gets hit there, it never returns. So they had to ask the question was which planes do we study, right? Do we study the planes that come back or do we study the planes that don't come back? And that's where they got it wrong back then. They put the right sort of data and analysis, but they came up with the wrong conclusion. So in the world of agentic AI, what we'd encourage all of you to do is ask the right questions of your team. There are the tools, there are the technologies. It can solve almost anything. It's limitless. But it's up to us as humans to continue asking these right questions to get the answers that we expect and to get the results that we all deserve in this agentic world. So, thank you. I know we are at the hour. It was a pleasure talking to all of you today. We have a AI workshop that we do. It's a 1 hour workshop where we help your organizations understand their AI journey. It's you can just scan the QR code that will shortly come up on screen, and you can just sign up, and we can sort of help you in your AI journey, and see how you can derive very powerful ROI, which we've seen. Um, and having said that, happy to take any kind of questions or queries, or email. You can just drop us an email. I'll just drop my email in the chat, so that you guys can see it. Yes. So yeah, happy to take your questions over email and be connected to all of you. And yeah, thank you for joining us today. We hope to stay in touch, and may the AI be with you.